Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Tristan Rallings, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraft woman Nikki Julian. We warmly welcome the family of Flight Sergeant Ronald Frederick Waldon, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome the members of the 460 Squadron Veterans and Friends Group and the members of the 1st 19th Battalion Royal New South Wales Regiment who are attending this evening's ceremony. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by families and visitors to the War Memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Ronald Waldon. Ronald Waldon was born in September 1918, the only son of Albert and Rosina Waldon of Beechworth, Victoria. Ronald's mother died when he was 9 years old. His father later remarried, and Ronald went on to become the half-brother of Jeffrey, Wendy, and Valerie. He attended elementary school in Beechworth and the University High School in Melbourne, and then attended Teachers College, becoming a primary school teacher for the Victorian Education Department. He enjoyed tennis, swimming, and cricket, and at the start of the Second World War, spent 3 months in the 59th Battalion, Citizens Military Forces, in accordance with Australia's Universal Military Service Scheme. Walden enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force in Melbourne in November 1940 and trained as an airman under the auspices of the Empire Air Training Scheme. After completing initial training at Lindfield in New South Wales, he was mustered as an air observer. His role was to navigate an aircraft to the target area and release a payload of bombs onto the designated target. Walden then travelled to Canada, where he attended Air Observers School at Edmonton in Alberta, Bombing and Gunnery School at Defoe in Saskatchewan, and Air Navigation School in Rivers, Manitoba. He then sailed to the United Kingdom to join RAF Bomber Command. He was posted to number 23 Operational Training Unit at RAF Pershore, where night bomber crews were formed and trained on the twin-engine Vickers-Wellington long-range medium bomber. In March 1942, Walden was posted to number 460 Squadron, RWF, based at RAF Brayton in Yorkshire, which had recently started operations and begun a 6-week apprenticeship bombing less heavily defended targets on the French coast. His first operational sortie was a raid on the French port of Le Havre on the night of the 8th of April 1942. Over the following weeks, Walden and his aircrew bombed Essen in Germany's Rhineland, returned to Le Havre, and raided Hamburg, Kiel, Stuttgart, and Warnemünde. In an effort to show the growing numerical strength of RAF Bomber Command, the newly appointed Commander-in-Chief, Air Chief Marshal Arthur Bomber Harris, went about accumulating a force of 1,000 bombers for 3 major raids against major German cities. They were the largest and most devastating raids on Nazi-occupied Europe at that point. Walden and his crew were among 18 Wellington bombers from number 460 Squadron that participated in Operation Millennium, the first 1,000 bomber raid on the German city of Cologne. On the night of 30th of May 1942, they were also part of the raiding force for the follow-up raid that took place 2 nights later against the German city of Essen. Of the 10 aircrews from number 460 Squadron that flew to Essen that night, Walden's and 1 other Wellington bomber failed to return to RAF Brayton. Ron's aircraft, Wellington Z1394, radio call sign Q for Queenie, was last seen taken off from RAF Brayton at 11:26 p.m. Owing to a strict adherence to maintaining radio silence, it was unclear at what point during the raid the aircraft disappeared. Just several weeks before his aircraft went missing, Walden wrote home to his family, urging them not to worry if such an event occurred. "Death in the Air Force is instantaneous," he wrote. "Also remember, if I should be posted as missing, there is every possibility that I shall float to the ground by chute, and that I shall have a darn good attempt at evading the blasted Germans and escape back to England." Ron remained missing until January 1943, when the Air Ministry in London received news from the German authorities that Q for Queenie had crashed in the North Sea during its return journey to Brayton on the night of the 3rd of June 1942. The only surviving crew member, Warrant Officer Doug Butterworth, later told the authorities that the bomber was flying low over the Dutch coast when it crashed into the sea without warning. Butterworth had been captured by a German launch 3 hours later and knew nothing more about the fate of the crew, whose bodies were later recovered near Vlissingen on the island of Walcheren. Aged 23 when he died, Ronald Waldon's remains lie in the Flushing Northern Cemetery in the Netherlands, alongside the 4 other crew members of Q for Queenie. A small epitaph written by his grieving father appears on his headstone, "His duty nobly done." Ronald Waldon's name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. He is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Ronald Frederick Waldon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.